Back in 2011, I left the United States and since then have gone on to visit more than 100 different countries around the world. In this video today, I'm going to share the main reasons I left the United States, and there's going to be some big important ones that you can potentially use to consider leaving or not leaving the United States. Now, for living overseas for more than a decade, I'm going to share the three main reasons I left the United States and two of the cons that I don't like about living overseas. And you're going to want to stick around to the end because one of these reasons could potentially save you more than $30,000 a year. Before we dig in, I just want to preface this video that I'm absolutely love the United States. I'm so grateful to have been born there and all of the opportunities that it's opened up for me to live a global life. I'm very aware of all these opportunities and I'm extremely grateful every single day. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dig in. Story time, guys. So back in 2011, this was a catalyst year for me. I was graduating university and had one of the most tragic things ever happen to me in my life. I'm not going to talk about the full story here. If you want to see that whole story on what sparked this journey, I'm going to leave a link below to a recent TEDx talk that I gave that dives deep into every single aspect of where I got started and to where I am at today. But I just want to share with you my thought process at this time. I had been working and traveling for a few years before I got to this point. It was my senior year of university and I had two paths to take. One path was the traditional corporate job. I had a few offers. The other path was of unknown, moving to Europe, booking a one-way flight, and seeing if things could work out. I chose the latter, and this catalyst was a big thing that pushed me in that direction. So all I want to say is my thought process for this was I was young, I had a lot of time. These opportunities were not ever really going to be present for me. And it was just one of these things where I decided to go with this path and I haven't looked back since. In retrospect, I know I made the right decision because it was the path that I truly desired. It was the dream life that I wanted to live. I think a lot of people face these fork in the road moments, but they choose the safer, more carefree option. Sometimes the higher risk, higher reward paths are going to pay off. And a lot of times it's going to be the path that you truly desire. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and go over how I came to these three conclusions and sort of my thought process for this. So during this time, I had already been experienced with traveling a little bit. I was leading the University of Missouri Study Abroad program, and I was in a unique position to lead the program again overseas that summer. And basically, I booked a one-way flight without any real plan, but my goal was to find a job in Europe. Within a few months, I was able to land a job teaching financial economics at a university in Prague. Again, this was that light bulb moment that really showed me it was possible to show up in a new country, expand my career, and still travel while doing it. While living in Prague, I was able to visit a new country every single month. Now, I want to talk about and switch gears to after living overseas for 10 years, what are some of the big decisions and what are the pros to living outside of the United States? After visiting more than 100 countries, I've had the unique pleasure to not only live and travel in these countries, but also work locally in local physical jobs. One of the biggest reasons to leave the United States is the high cost of living for a low quality of life. Imagine if you were able to go and move today, hop on a flight, and things would be 10 times cheaper. And you wouldn't have to stay at the same level of lifestyle you have now. You could actually elevate your lifestyle to be cheaper and live a life in a higher luxury. Now, what does this mean? If you're spending $2,000 or $3,000 a month on living expenses in the US, you can take that life and move to some place like Thailand and not only have a better apartment, you can work less, you can have a chef, you can have a cleaner, you can have a driver, you can work 15 or 20 hours per week and still have a lower cost of living, meaning you're going to save more money, you're going to have a higher quality of life, you're going to be able to retire early, invest more of that savings into other things, and also have more leisure time to travel around the world to do things that you actually enjoy. Now, this is the biggest thing and what most people call is geo arbitrage. Essentially earning in dollars, but spending in overseas currencies. You're able to take advantage of purchasing power. And basically this allows you to live and elevate your lifestyle for a fraction of the cost. This is the biggest reason why living overseas checks so many boxes for me because you can elevate your lifestyle, have more room for investments. And for me, I'm able to invest more of these savings back into my business and back into my personal growth. If somebody paid you $30,000 a year to live outside of the United States, you could still come back to the US for a few weeks or a month. Would you take that opportunity? Well, it's actually an IRS, a super clear-cut example of what's called foreign earned income exclusion, where the United States will essentially pay you upwards to $30,000 a year in tax savings. So basically, if you're earning upwards to $120,000 a year, you can essentially not have to pay income taxes if you spend more than 330 days outside of the United States. This is the FEIE, and again, there's a few different examples and situations, but for most people living overseas long-term, you're going to be eligible for this. Again, this isn't tax advice. Talk to a tax professional, but you can take advantage of this and save upwards to $30,000 every single year. So the tax savings alone is one of the big reasons why living a life overseas is you're not only getting a cheaper and higher quality life, but you're able to save more of your money and not have to pay taxes in the United States. You still have to file, you still have to sometimes pay on certain amounts that are over that point. But again, you're able to save upwards to $30,000 every year. And if you're married or if you're in a couple, that's good for both of you guys. What if you could take your same income and salary, but only have to work 15 or 20 hours and live overseas, have a bit of a more relaxed culture? And one of the things that most people notice when they visit Europe is how long people take for lunches, how relaxed everyone is. And this is probably why people live a little bit longer. They're a little bit less stressed. And again, this is one of my favorite things about living in Europe is you get the best of both worlds. I have that kind of business American hustle where I'm always looking to work. And it's kind of mellowed out or middled out by living in Europe, where I feel like I'm not on one extreme. And it's been able to serve me really well because I can actually access my businesses in the United States, but I can also access the really cool culture side of being a little bit more laid back while living in Europe. Now, this is one of the great things about living overseas, and one of the things I love is you get the best of both worlds. You get the really great business side of earning in the United States or having a business and US customers, and then you get the flip side of living locally in Europe or wherever you want in the world, where you can kind of build the lifestyle and culture that you really love. Where I find that if you're living in the United States, that can be a little bit harder to achieve. Now, these are the three main reasons, and I probably have hundreds more of reasons about things I love living overseas. And one of the biggest things for me is that I just love to travel. So being able to have more access to travel. When you live in the United States, you can go to Canada or Mexico, but everywhere else outside of that takes a long time, is pretty expensive, and just isn't as easy as hopping on a $100 flight over to Italy, right? So there is a lot of advantages for traveling while living over in Europe or living in Asia. The access to travel is going to be a lot easier and just a little bit less expensive than if you were living in the United States. So these are the main reasons, but not everything is perfect. So let's get into a few of the cons of living overseas. So the biggest con or biggest downside, and probably the biggest worry I've seen from other people looking to move their life from the United States to living overseas, is losing touch or losing access with friends and family. Again, this is one of the biggest downsides to living overseas is you can't really have as much in-person access with your friends and family. Now, the way I sort of justify this and have come to terms with it is I have a lot of friends and family that live outside of their main hometown. Meaning, I'm from St. Louis. I probably wouldn't live in St. Louis if I moved back to the United States. So I would likely see my friends and family for these major holidays for a few weekends out of the year. So what I do and how I kind of make up for this is I usually plan 1 or 2 long-term trips with my family around these times or throughout the year. So that way I'm spending 2 weeks traveling around Europe and Prague and Italy with my family, where I'm creating very unique experiences with these people, with my family members and my friends that I wouldn't be able to replicate if I lived in the United States. So again, I've looked at some of my family members and friends, and honestly, I'd probably spend just as much or if not more time with friends and family on a very deep level where we're very present and having and creating these unique memories. So again, this is one way to justify it. I do understand that if you live in your hometown and you see your family every day, of course, that's going to be very hard to replicate while living overseas. But for you, there's Zoom, there's phone calls, there's texting. There's a lot of great ways to stay in touch with your family. I have Zoom calls pretty much every other week with my friends and family. So that's another great way to just kind of stay in their lives. The second downside to living outside the United States, the thing that is a little bit harder to replicate is, again, you're going to miss opportunities to some of these big business events and opportunities. There's just so many entrepreneurial events happening inside the United States, conferences, networking events, and just big people that are making moves in almost every single industry. So if you're in a specific industry, it might be kind of hard to replicate that same experience overseas in Europe or Asia or wherever. It's really going to be variant on what industry you're in, what your goals are. And so this can be a little bit tough on how you go about doing this. What I found is, luckily I'm in a niche where everyone is pretty accessible online. That's the great thing about online businesses, is most people are structured for that. But I've also found some really cool communities that are filled with online entrepreneurs, meaning there's going to be local events happening all around the world where people are meeting in person, where you're able to access people in the forums and then connect with them virtually or in real life. The cool thing about these types of communities is I can show up in just about every city in the United States or overseas, check my community, see who's in this town, and then meet up with them or ask them questions. So it's a really great access for just meeting people in a location. But even better is all of these people have established online businesses. So we have a lot in common as far as looking to grow ourselves and our business to be able to work from anywhere in the world. There's a lot of great things about this, but again, I do realize that there are some opportunities that you're missing out on while living in the United States when it comes to business and networking opportunities. So guys, that's it. I could go on for hours and hours ranting about all this stuff. There's pros and cons to anywhere you live in the world. Nowhere is going to be perfect, but what you need to do is be intentional. I have a checklist of all the things that I actually look for when moving to a new destination. If you would like to see this, leave a comment below and I'll be able to send it to a few people. Again, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit subscribe, and I'm going to leave a video up here in the corner that's handpicked just for you. See you in the next one.